Bonjour mes amis, my name is Freya and welcome once again to the annual CCSF Wolfling run. Alright, before we get started you should know that Pixis of the Papa's Cafe is having another blog series this year, so you should definitely check that out. I believe the aim is to have another post every day of the festival, so looking forward to it. Now, of course, today is the day that you get to meet our contestants for the Wolfling run. And as we all know, that's not always the most exciting day of the Wolfling run. Sure, you get to see everybody's names and horrific sprite combinations, but that's pretty much all of the action that happens in the first episode. But to give you some incentive to stick around, we have actually acquired a short story written by Steve Grand, and I'm gonna have that at the end, so let's dive right into it. Alright, assuming future me remembers to do an introduction for this part, you should already know that I'm going to be showing you how to make a custom Norn in case you want to do a Wolfling run like we hold for the CCSF. All you need is a blueprint with what your Norn is going to look like, a list of the breeds that you have and the slots that they go in, the Creatures 3 genetics kit or a similar program, and a copy of Creatures 3 or Docking Station. Now, I used a random number generator to select a creature from the Wolfling run, which I have not started yet. The Norn we're going to be making today is Little Nightmare from Mia. I like to name my worlds after the person who submitted the Norn, that way I can see it on the import screen. Obviously this is not necessary, especially if you're going to be doing all Norns that you made. Okay, once you're in the game, go ahead and pause it, because you won't need it right away. And let's make the Norn. It looks like we have an imbalance with a bias towards male Norns, so because Mia selected either, we're going to make this one female. For the head sprite, she requested C2 Pixie. As you can see here, that is Norn slot U. Load up your genome with whatever you're going to use. I'm going to use the new True Warm Blood genome that got sent to me by Draggler. Sometimes it throws a caption error, especially if you downloaded it from somewhere else. You can ignore that. It's pretty much nothing. These are more appearance genes than I thought I'd have. Oh well. Head, Norn, U. Head, Norn, U. Body. Okay, so I have double the appearance genes for some reason. Don't know why. Have to ask Draggler about that one. I don't know if it was mentioned. Oh, yes, it is written here that the appearance genes are doubled up. Okay, so because C2 Pixie is one of the Norns that Mia requested, what you want to do is you want to hatch a C2 Pixie. Well, you don't necessarily need to hatch it, but you want to create a C2 Pixie egg before you attempt the custom Norn. And you can just get rid of the egg right after, it's just to make sure that the sprites are loaded. For the body, we are going with Toxic, Norn slot J. Bony Grendel, arms and legs, so that's Grendel C. And for the tail, she requested C1 Pixie. Now the C1 sprites have the tail attached to the body, so I don't actually think that's going to look like anything, but I'm not positive. Somebody may have split the two at some point down the line. Guess we'll find out. C1 Pixie is Geet slot L. Now I gotta make sure that I have all of the Norns loaded. So, Toxic. C1 Pixie. And we need the Bony Grendels. Now go to the Export tab. I will be hatching a female. Lay the egg. And we wait. And there she is. I cannot tell. Yes, the toxic body did work. Okay. So I will be naming you Little Nightmare. Oh no, I ran out of room. Need the protective tub to lengthen it. There we go. Alright, now just export your creature. And we're good to go. Our first contestant is Fortune from Gulliver. And I'm going to be using the random teleporter to put them wherever, but obviously if it puts them in a location of extreme peril, then I will remove it. And I'm just double checking that the bridge and engineering are warm enough for the true warm bloods. We seem to be okay. Okay. Up next we have Bully from Fiery Birdie Thing. Where is he? Oh, there he is. Okay. Now we have Horace from Spaceship Rat. And for the record, we have a total of 46 Norns this year, which is insane. I think the comms room is still quite cold. Let's try that again. One more time. Third time's the charm, little man. There we go. Oh, maybe this was a bad idea. Next we have Billy's Side Dish from Manic Pixie. Sure, that works. I'll just, like, make you exit here. Good girl. Oh. Oh. Okay. Up next we have Lore from Delcron. Sugar Plum from Rose Dye. Oh, I don't want that there. AAA from The One Who Screams. And, despite the fact that their name is The One Who Screams, I have confirmation that it is in fact pronounced AAA, and not We have Sluggy Boy from Warns. I had fun making Sluggy Boy. I'm not counting that. That's not really fair either, but I'll put him outside the crypt. There we go. Next we have Ori from Wingheart. And Wingheart had a special request to make Ori white. I don't know if that's a reference to Ori and the Blind Forest. I haven't played it, but I bought it for my roommate. But I figured it's just one, it can't hurt. Please don't, like, next year, if I do this again, spam me with requests for special colored Norns. This is Willem from Diamond. Okay. Made the most of it. This is Alicia Britannica from Felanorn. This is OWO4, The Voyage Home from Civi. This is Firepaw from Rocky. This is Alice in Wonderland from Carithena. Lots of people are winding up in the desert. Nice. I've always liked the desert as a starting location. This is Florida Man from Ico. This is Nocta from Sill. This is Bengal from Track. Oh wait, there's too many in the world. Hang on. Let me boost up my population limit. This is Bengal from Track. Oh, didn't even have to tell him to push it. This is Eos from Duringo. This is Epic Lulu Moment from Lulu. Oh, that's... Let's try again. There we go. Who was in the aquarium? Ah, AAA was in the aquarium. I hope it's warm in there. Hang on. Where did I leave the thing? Oh, it's okay. It's okay temperature-wise. There's not much food in there, though. What are you doing? What? You're hungry? Yeah, I bet you are. Okay. This is Rigsy from Lurstop. Ah! Stop that! That's not... Here. This is Peanut Buster from Rinny. I think if they wind up on the Capilata, I'm just gonna move them right here. Makes sense. This is Scally from Dragler. This is Azura from Stardew Stunner. This is Gore-Tex from Norn Breeder. This is Little Nightmare from Mia. I've completely lost her. Oh. This is Tigger from C-Rex. Somebody is already making the falter sound. Okay, I'm gonna feed everyone for the moment. Just to make sure everyone's getting a chance. This is Honey from a Bobo. This is Jilly Juice from Original Character. This is Ladybug from Pixis. This is Mallory Practice from Wesley. Mal for short. This is Pollywagger from Slicks. This is Zeus Tempestatus from the She Arc. I'm so sorry, by the way, if I am butchering any of your Norns names. Or any of your names, for that matter. This is Sputs from Loki. Ooh, nice! Another aquarium friend. This is 2020 from Cyborg. I actually had to shorten this one. Her intended name was The Year of Suffering 2020, but I thought that might have been a bit much. This is Dancing Etten from Silver, whose name I also had to change. I will leave it to your imagination what I changed it from. Okay, that's fine. This is Oliviana from Neon Thriller. So many of them are ending up on the Capilata. This is Big Thicky from Shusha Dragon. I feel like I have to constantly have my wits about me just in case they teleport themselves somewhere terrible. Oh, this is Astereth by Entropy Embrace. This is Kaida from Sonic Fan 2525. Ooh, I think this is the first one we've gotten in the jungle. This is McDoolnads from Quesadilla Wizard. You guys really went off with the names this year. Ooh, very interesting. Next to the Splicer. This is Ribbon from Verm. This is Muffin Bean from Linda. Ah, another jungle one. This is Rebabel II from Hamster, aka Keyboard Interrupt. I think some of my body data is a little messed up, but not to worry. Ah, another Splicer friend. This is... okay. I don't know if you guys remember when you were like signing your Norns up, but I specifically said no profanities in the name blank thing. So this is Profanities Reb Johnson from Puppy Pie. Ah, very good, didn't have to tell her. This is Glimneo Tepianostro from the mysterious stranger known as me, who is not so strange anymore. We're actually like chatting and we're friends now. But I like the mysterious stranger title too much. This is Bubble from Pirate Rob. Is that it? Is that it? I think that's it. I think we're good. I think we're in business. Okay, let me make sure everyone's fed. Okay, I'm gonna turn off creature voices before they drive me insane. Okay, I think this is everyone. Wow. This has got to be the biggest run we've ever done. I don't remember how many there were last year, but I don't think it was 46. I think I would have complained about it more if there were. Okay, well, let's get our first look at the wheel. Now, I actually do have some super rare events in the wheel. Famine. We are starting immediately with the famine event. Okay. Alrighty. I've actually not tested this agent yet. So, we'll see. Yep. That's a famine, alright. Took all the food away. Except for the bugs. Wow. We're really starting off mean. Let's spin again one more time before I call it. Macrobacteria. Well, alright. Who are we giving it to? Glimneo Tepianostro. Well, that's a shame. Man, how the heck am I gonna get this on any one specific creature? Okay, where is Glimneo? Oh, okay, he's in the jungle. The mighty jungle. That's okay. Alright. What's it giving him? Just pain for now. Well, that won't kill him, I don't think. Oh, it's gone. Nice. Yeah, he did fine. Alright, as promised, I give you A New Testament by Steve Grand. On a tiny, coin-rim world, everything that really matters in life tends to be inherently circular in some fashion, and from the perspective of less recursively attuned outsiders, such as ourselves, often bafflingly so. So it was, for example, that Prydwen dutifully presented the bracelet to his father, who bequeathed it to his own father, who handed it down to his father before him, and thence to his father's father, and so on, all the way back through the generations to Althrazil, the father of all Norns, who found that he had no use for it, and gave it to Prydwen. You see what I mean? Exasperating. That Althrazil was the father of all Norns is of course merely a claim, the veracity of which might have some bearing on things. Who had claimed it, and to what purpose, are lost in the midst of time, and Althrazil himself, meanwhile, is saying nothing. One might have thought he would be exactly the right person to clear this up, but sometimes it is better not to ask. Sometimes, quite frankly, it is better just to treat the whole damn thing as an exercise in stoical acceptance, and be grateful that our story takes place on Albia, not on its sister world of Mobius. Althrazil, and who can blame everybody, lives alone, in a secret burrow hidden under the mountain of thought, where he had fondly hoped nobody would bother him. Alas, nothing remains a secret for very long on the rim of a small circular world, where passing something by without ever noticing it is not really an option, and hence people often did bother him. Frequently, the biggest bother of all, although secretly Althrazil enjoyed every minute of it, came in the fidgety form of young Prydwen, who would show up to borrow Althrazil's precious books. In case this should seem a little self-centered for one of the heroes of this piece, it is fair to say that Prydwen would sometimes bring a book to lend to Althrazil too, if he believed it might be especially illuminating to him. Almost always, the copy in question had formerly belonged to the great Althrazil himself, and hence its power to illuminate was indisputable. But to return to the subject of the bracelet, for all of this intergenerational bequeathing of bracelets to occur with due ceremony, as it had done forever as far as anyone knew, it was of course completely necessary for the bravest adolescent Norns in each generation to go on a great and perilous journey. They would set out to circumnavigate the whole of Albia, through friend and foe, from west to east, and even from east to west again if they got that far. This was, as I say, completely necessary. It almost goes without saying how necessary it was, which is why so few Norns ever brought it up. As far as I can tell, nobody had ever questioned the exact, detailed, step-by-step logic behind this conclusion very closely at all, partly because Norns are not exactly great at linear thinking, but mostly on account of it being such a splendidly handsome idea, and hence the journey eventually became capitalized, much heroism likewise became historized, and endless teenagers were kept suitably occupied and at arm's length. Largely at the suggestion of Althrazil, as no one was surprised to learn, Prydwen had been especially chosen to take part in this year's journey, and at last his big moment had come. He set out alone, since, although he did have a few friends, it was they who tended to call round at his place, while he was just as happy not calling round at their place at all, and so they didn't know he was going anywhere. It's not that he was antisocial, to be fair. It's just that it was hard to find people who were interested in, actual interesting things, like stars and rocks, and why the surfaces of streams sometimes look like they have fishing lines stretched across them when they don't. He was happy all by himself in any case. Well, not happy exactly, but content. Happiness is overrated, he would tell himself. Althrazil was there to wave him off, rather enthusiastically, one might say, and soon the world in which Prydwen had barely yet grown up was all but out of sight. That first night, camping was a joy. No lamps for miles, and so many stars that he felt he could easily fall right off the planet and soar through the heavens if he simply chose in his heart to let go of the ground. He tried, but he wasn't quite brave enough. The second day was good too. New rocks, new plants, endless new questions, although by that evening he was starting to feel like it might have been better to have someone to share them with. It is here, early on that very evening, that we fortuitously come across Gwendoline. Being a girl, she had figured out the logistics for this whole journey thing long before the boys, and was already quietly well on her way. He saw her first as a dot, ahead of him in the far distance. He hid sheepishly behind a bush for a while, in case she saw him, but she stayed doggedly on his side of the horizon, and so he tried instead to match her pace, and not have to catch up with her. If he caught up, they might have to speak, and he wasn't really ready for that. Maybe kill a few Grendels first, or at least startle some Ettins, and then he'd probably be able to pluck up the nerve. He didn't know who she was exactly, but he knew that she was a she, you see. Even tiny dots move in characteristically girlish or boyish ways to someone with an eye for patterns. So he kept his distance, and watched the dot dart animatedly from place to place, stopping a while here, sidetracking a little there. Eventually it dawned on him that she was stopping at exactly the places he would stop at himself some minutes later. Perhaps, he thought, she was interested in interesting things too, but that seemed too much to hope for, so he didn't. The dot knew perfectly well that he was there. Of course she did. Girls have eyes in the backs of their heads, in addition to the big sparkling ones the other half of us can't help but notice in the front. At first she felt a little threatened by his presence, and kept a few familiar contingency plans in mind. But then she started to understand how he moved and what he would pay attention to, and steadily relaxed. After a while, she began to leave a few flowers unpicked for him to find, or she would turn over an interesting rock and leave it in a prominent place so that he would see it too. For hours they held an intricate and intimate conversation like this, more than a mile apart. Not everyone can do that, it should be pointed out, least of all the ditzy, floppy-eared furballs she had just left behind. Gwendoline was not, it must be said, the most popular girl amongst her fellow Nornettes. She was a bit odd for a start, a dreamer, who spent a great deal of time inside her own head where she was happy, and had very little use for what, if anything at all, was to be found inside the heads of others. Moreover, when you are named after your tribe's mortal enemy, no matter how prettily, this was certain to become just one more piece of ammunition for the other girls, the lipstick brigade, she called them, who would often use this fact to laugh at her. Such laughter was bound to have a lasting influence on any young woman's self-image, and this, I fear, was the point of it. In truth, the lipstick brigade hated her for letting them copy her homework, and for helping them get some answers right almost by themselves, and especially for being better than them at the particular board games that boys liked. Not to mention for having quite nice hair, and all those other annoying and infuriating things that certain girls apparently hate about each other because their own feelings are too difficult to cope with. But they didn't really know why they were so irritated about it all, or why they couldn't understand her, or even the very fact that it was all because they didn't understand her, and so, sometimes, if you lack sufficient aim, all you can do is lob ammunition at random. But out here, Gwendoline was in her element, not a lipstick in sight. They met as night fell. I say met, but it would be more accurate to say they exchanged a nod from a polite distance as they laid out their respective tents. "Good night," they called to each other, and that was that. Gwendoline lay there for a little while, trying not to admit to herself that she was glad he was nearby, but soon fell asleep glad of it anyway. Pridwin spent most of the night wide awake, imagining that he could hear gentle breathing. By morning, they were friends. Sometimes it just takes certain Norns a little time to get used to things before it's okay, you know? They ate breakfast together, and swapped names and stories. They also swapped some rocks they'd collected the day before, because each of them already knew the other would find them interesting. And thereafter they were in this thing together. When the going got tough, one would carry the other's bag. When one of them started to fade, the other would make sure that a meal occurred. But for the most part, they said nothing, since it was increasingly apparent that nothing really needed to be said. They both enjoyed this intimate silence immensely. Albia is not generally a dangerous place, although sometimes deadly asps would slither out of nowhere, and Gwendoline and Pridwin would step cautiously around them, keeping each other safe, and hoping upon hope that their hands might accidentally touch. But as the terrain got more wild and dark, there were many far bigger adventures, about which, sadly, I have no space to tell you. Just take it from me that much heroic rescuing was done. Sometimes Pridwin heroically rescued Gwendoline, who in turn would do all of the swooning. Sometimes, I gather, it was the other way around. Sadly, they agreed between themselves not to talk about those times, and hence, dear reader, your narrator has little firm information to go on. It is in this way, and has been for centuries, that epic tales tend to become unwittingly biased. Many of these adventures involved fighting fierce Grendels, who were standing defiantly in their way, or frequently to be found attacking from the east. If the truth be told, the Grendels had simply arrived at the very same idea of an epic and heroic journey as the Norns, and for much the same psychosocial reasons, to do with growing up and what on earth to do with teenagers. They were just going about it in the opposite direction. Each side was equally alarmed to come across the other, and equally anxious not to show it. This is very unfortunate, now that I think about it, and many innocent lives could probably have been saved. Maybe many wonderful and lasting interracial friendships were missed out on, too. But still, if it were not for exactly this kind of misunderstanding, the whole history of nations and races would be very much duller and less thrilling, and story writers would have little to do. So there's that. It was during one of these encounters with Grendels that a tremendously perilous thing happened. Really, tremendously perilous. Our heroes' lives were almost snuffed out like candles. Much daring-do had to be daringly done. And assorted other things happened that might have caused a more pugilistic or at least more attentive chronicler than me to take much better notes. But anyway, imagine crawling across crumbling rocky bridges over fiery pits of doom, moments of quick thinking that cause the enemy's dastardly tricks to be turned back on them somehow, blind leaps from cliff tops hand in hand into the unexpected arms of peculiarly soft and forgiving trees, who would immediately become staunch allies. That sort of thing. It was an adventure, I tell you. It's a real shame you missed it. At any rate, when this particular travail was finally over, and the worst wounds had been attended to, our fearless couple, in a spirit of patriotic camaraderie, acting as one brave warrior to another, not to mention in an almost overwhelming rush of relief, ceremoniously took off their swords and embraced. A few moments later, and touchingly somewhat to their surprise, given that it really wasn't a normal part of the whole backslapping warrior thing, they kissed. Tenderly. Then meltingly. You don't need me to pepper you with adjectives and adverbs right now, I'm sure you can imagine perfectly well what it feels like to be melted by a kiss. Take all the time you need. At this point, in fact, time itself stopped, for at least a month, I'd guess. Perhaps it was longer, but nobody was counting. Distant church bells held their breaths. Online calendars hurriedly got in touch with one another to rearrange meetings. Would-be passers-by suddenly remembered something important, and returned quietly to their homes. The kiss went on regardless of it all. It was, I'm told, overwhelmingly magical. Or it was all right, depending on who you ask and what they're willing to admit to at the time. Eventually, after a few halting trial runs, Pridwin finally dared to let go of Gwendoline, and to trust to the fates that she wouldn't, in fact, immediately vanish before his eyes. He waited a nervous moment to see, then dropped, slightly awkwardly given the momentousness of the occasion, onto one rather bruised knee. Then, in a flourish of reckless inspiration, he held out the bracelet. Gwendoline frowned slightly, and hesitated for one of those seconds that felt like an hour, maybe two, but then she took it from his trembling fingers and placed it around her wrist. She clasped it together as calmly and somberly and thoughtfully as she felt she could, given that she was mostly doing it in a desperate effort to stop her pounding heart leaping out from the bottom of her arm. Another anxious moment passed before Gwendoline smiled a smile that was widely estimated to be 1,000 miles across, and all was clearly well with the world. The deed, whatever it was done. Nobody had even disappeared. The distant church bells let out a sigh, possibly even a peal. Not a single word was spoken throughout, and yet Pridwin now found himself feeling mightily relieved and stupidly happy about what had seemed to be decided in the silence. And why wouldn't he be? Gwendoline, for her part, did a little dance of barely suppressed delight, mostly in her head, but perhaps just slightly for real. And again, why wouldn't she, darn it? What the bracelet felt about all of this drama was not recorded, but why would it be? And thus was marked the very beginning of the long story of how the cycle got broken and the circle was ended. Albia would, in fact, never be the same again from this moment onwards, for better or for worse. A broken circle never quite repeats. The bracelet, you see, would no longer be passed from son to father, up through the generations, since it had now passed from future husband to future wife instead, and nobody had thought that scenario through. So, whence thereafter? What would happen next? It would no longer be east versus west, for sure. No longer clockwise versus anti-clockwise, Norns versus Grendels. Everything had suddenly shifted sideways a little, and nobody would quite know what to make of it for some time to come, perhaps not until they were back at this point again, and noticed that they were not where they expected to be. But in the meantime, a slightly shaking Pridwin was, for now at least, exactly where he wanted to be, beside his beloved Gwendoline, checking that she doesn't unexpectedly vaporize. And she was side by side with the handsomest and most intoxicatingly interesting guy she believed she'd ever seen. Just wait until the Lipstick Brigade hears about that. The following morning, as the still circling Albion sun rose out of the shadow of the mountain of thought, its rays glanced upon two intertwined bodies on a blanket, sleepy but serene, just watching the stars fade away into a limpid dawn. For the very first time in its life, and for more reasons than one, it wasn't quite sure which way to turn. That's gonna do it for this video, so thank you everybody so much for watching. If you enjoyed, let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you guys later. Bye!